Talk story, my Molokai. A story is like a tree. It starts out with roots, but to tell the whole story, you have to tell all its branches. This story is part of Supexplore Adventure Concept Paddle number 3. The concept is, can I paddle the channel at the age of 50? The Molokai M2O, or Molokai to Oahu, is the World Championships of ocean racing. It starts from the island of Molokai and crosses the Kaiwi Channel to finish at Oahu. For 32 miles or 50 or so kilometers, you are in the lion's cage with the lion. This is an unpredictable and deep ocean channel with ever-changing currents and tides. Ocean swells and trade winds come and go, making the race a tactical and strategic puzzle. It is the World Championships of paddling, not because it is a good downwind paddle. It is the World Championships because it is a hard downwind paddle. It is a soul-defining search for the connection with nature. For me, Molokai is a pinnacle life event. This story, though, starts out 4 years ago. In 2009, I was hanging out with a bunch of guys in Australia talking about Molokai race when someone mentioned it would be good to do it for the first time in a team, and I said no way. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it solo, and we all laughed. From there though, the seed was planted and the idea stuck with me, and I decided to do Molokai for my 50th birthday in 2013, and I spent 4 years tucking away valuable pieces of information about the race. And I said to myself, do not make this too big, it's just water. And to an extent, this is still a healthy mantra to have humming along in the background, but in reality I had no idea what I'd got myself into. In Sydney, in Australia, in November 2012, 8 months prior to the race day, I started the physical side of training. The complexity and depth of the challenge became clearer. I was not fit enough and I had a lot to do. The truth is, the more I knew about this race, the more it began to scare me. Just after Christmas, my dad passed away and I flew home into Auckland. I looked down on New Zealand's second biggest tidal harbour, the Manukau, and said, hey, I can paddle that. And as a tribute to Dad and my family, I began planning to do the first west to east traverse of New Zealand that I call Two Oceans, and also the first circumnavigation of Auckland that I call Portage Road Sup. On a research trip in February, I returned to New Zealand to collect 2 national subtitles, and when the race organizer handed me my race number 123, I knew something was up. I knew something was good. Two Oceans and Portage Road Sup was difficult. I needed a tide window and favourable winds, or it's impossible to complete. I would start at the site of New Zealand's worst maritime disaster, the Orpheus at Spooky Wharapu, at the infamous Manukau Bar. I would do 2 traditional portages, the Otahu and the Whao portage. I would travel the same path as that taken by the great ocean-going canoe, Tainui, 800 years previous. I found a tide window, and there are only 4 a year, and in April 2013, just before it got cold in New Zealand, I set off. I had an incoming tide at Watapu and outgoing at Tamaki River, and I got some lucky west winds. Halfway, I suffered stomach muscle cramps. Too much paddling on one side. I experienced doubt when I battled fierce headwinds and chop. Yeah, just like I would face in Molokai. I knew this was a good test of my mental and physical strength. And you know, I did it. I completed the first west to east traverse of New Zealand and the circumnavigation of Auckland on a sup. And yeah, it was amazing, but it was due to my amazing support of my team and my family that rallied around me. And for that I thank you. Tony Mara, my New Zealand safety officer and a two-time Volvo around the world sailing champion, said to me, if you get to the start line at Molokai and are not sure if you have done enough training, then you haven't. And something about his words rang true. And I said to myself, there is no way I want to feel that. It's time to step up. And my Molokai coach, Jeff Chang, he had informed me, Stuart, paddle in rough water and get your paddles up to 40 or even 50 kilometers before the race. Jeff sent me that video you see here of the sailboat in the channel, and when I watched it for the first time I was shocked, and I replied to Jeff, holy smoke, that video has given me a kick in the butt. And he said, hey, it's not always like that. Regardless, he'd made his point, and I began to train on the rough made for Molokai headlands in Sydney with my training partner, prone paddler Molokai bound Nicholas Malik. And my training week began to look like this. There's Nick. I do yoga every day. I do 2 long paddles and a couple of shorter paddles. I do stairs running with some press-ups 3 times a week. I had a rest day on Sunday where I do a yoga class, a Pilates class in the steam room, acclimatizing for the heat of Hawaii. I also had a simple whiteboard that I would walk past every day, and my whiteboard mantra was simple: yoga, sleep, diet, hydration and training. And somewhere amongst all of this, and importantly, I made another goal: to get to the start line healthy and relaxed. This was a marathon, not a sprint. I needed to stay healthy and relax. A couple of training paddles really stood out, and one was Nick's idea: Cronulla to Rose Bay, 42 kilometers through some very rough water. This paddle is very rarely attempted. Yep, Nick, this one took us 8 hours and was mind-opening. Mile after mile of backwash off cliffs, in a 2-meter wind swell, in the strong onshore winds. And yep, it tested us. I spend a lot of time swimming, and I was glad I found out where my mind went under pressure before Molokai. Something I could work on. I said to Nick afterwards, if we can complete that 5 weeks before Molokai, then we can complete Molokai with 5 more weeks training. Yeah, Nick liked that idea. And let me tell you, so much of this game is perspective. There was also another paddle I loved. It was a solo paddle, and I was practicing catching bumps 2 weeks out from Molokai. where I paddled the entire length of the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. That's Golden Beach to Noosa, 60 kilometers or 37 miles, and it took me 6 hours 45 minutes, and it was amazing because I never thought I'd do that. Yeah, I got a few niggles, but I learnt a few things. One of the things I learnt is that I was ready. And I also started to train alone. I needed to get the training in, and when I could not find a partner, I got myself some safety gear, and for the long hours on the water, here's some of my gear that I had. I had a Garmin marine held GPS in a custom cradle that I made, a marine handheld VHF radio, gels, energy bar, Leatherman skeletal, a Zeke PLB waist belt, a personal locator beacon, a Zeke long john, a Zeke high visibility vest, a Zeke hydrophobic thermal top, and my camelback. And I devised new solo paddling routes for different conditions, like paddling into a strong wind and then coming back with the wind. These ones are pretty tough. Here's DY to Blue Point, and here is me after my Facebook post read, I got beaten up by the ocean today, paddled DY to Ferry Bower, Manly, into the wind. Head down, I missed the paddle, I missed the handle, and it blasted me in the eye. I then downwinded back to DY. Some solid swell out there. Now I know where I'm at. I climbed off my knees a few times. Pretty humbling, but I like it. 2 months of rough water training off these beautiful, built for Molokai headlands to come. Another was loop paddles, like this one. Mona Vale Loop, where I'd park my car, paddle down the coast with the tailwind and then back up the harbour on the other side into the wind, and thus returning to my car, about 30 kilometres. All the time Nick and I refined drinking and eating while paddling, skills we needed for endurance paddling. Paddling in 30 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit in 85% humidity requires special measures. Failure is available for even the fittest of athletes, and we're coming from a Sydney winter. It gets tough. And then off to Oahu, where I had 1 week prior to the race, and I needed time to taper and time to acclimatise. I needed just the right accommodation, and found it. My checklist for my accommodation was somewhere away from the busyness of Waikiki, somewhere on the beach, a park to walk in, a food shop close by, a room I could do basic food preparation in, and something not too expensive. By this time I was on my credit card and it was looking bad, and I got into a little routine at my oasis. Hydrate, a swim before breakfast, plenty of healthy natural foods, hydrate, plenty of rest, and there I found a friend. Sums up the Supexplore ethos. Follow you Zen, inspire someone, put out a hand, be peaceful in the storm, dare to believe, Supexplore. And everything was going smoothly, and then, can you believe it, yoga is dangerous. 2 days out from the race, I'm lazily stretching and watching a 6-man outrigger canoe drop into 5-foot waves, and my mind was elsewhere as I surfed the wave with them. I had promised not to surf until after the race, and the outrigger raced across the wave, and pop, I felt a snag in the front of my upper thigh. I try to swim it off and it doesn't work, so I Google it. It's a grade 1 strain, between 3 and 10 days healing. I start to pray and do rice, compression, elevation. I need an edge, I've got to make this. I'm flying to Molokai, my Facebook post read, with a grade 1 quad strain. Life is like that. Eyes on the prize now. Race forecast for Sunday, northeast winds 20 knot, wind waves 8 foot, southeast swell 3 foot, and Molokai is breathtakingly beautiful in a remote, stark way. Life has a simple beat. And for the first time on this adventure, I feel a long way from home. This race, however, It's a conundrum, and I looked that word up in the dictionary. It means a riddle or something puzzling. And you know, it was odd for me to swim out to the boat in the middle of the night to get my paddle the night before the race. Everyone was freaking out, thinking my support boat had not turned up. And you know what? It was weird. And because I felt so calm. I would have paddled a coconut tree if I had to. And the answer to why I felt so calm is because I was ready. It's kind of funny though. I don't have too many photos of the race. Just some blurry ones taken from the boat. I just focused on finishing the race, not photoing it. And yet, it was still a conundrum for me. It was odd to fall at the start of the race on some little boat wake. It was odd to race with a personal boat. It was odd to follow directions from the boat captain. And yeah, we take a traditional line north. And I fall a few times, maybe a dozen or so in total. I guess just losing my concentration and the choppy conditions and getting tired, you know. And the wind doesn't turn up as expected, so I just keep paddling. And the niggles turn up. I get a sore knee and a creaky muscle in my shoulder. My elbow doesn't quite feel right, so I adjust my pace. I now adjust my posture and I keep going. I drink fluid. I drink lots of it. In the end, I end up drinking 7 litres, and I eat a few gels, just for a change. The race committee boat swings by 2/3 of the way through the race, and he tells my boat captain, I'm the furthest paddler north, but I don't know that. I would not know, as I was on my own out there, hardly a paddler in sight, and yet I feel strong the whole race, and I cross the line. Yeah, not a race record. 3rd in the solo unlimited over 50 in a time of 6 hours 53 minutes. Yeah. For the 32-mile race, I paddled 40 miles. And Nick finishes just behind me in his own miracle race. Thanks, mate. I'm told it's the hardest race on record. Well, that's why I trained, I suppose. To say I've been beaten up training these last 8 months is putting it mildly. Yeah, I won a few races and I lost a few races. I broke some hearts and I broke some gear, and I made some lifelong friends. Yeah, I got into debt. That's life. What I can also say is the last 8 months has not been boring. I have some more training secrets on my blog at supexplore.com, and I got a YouTube where there's a very revealing self-portrait called My Molokai introduction video. Check that out. But what I will say is Molokai leaves its mark on you somehow. It leaves its mark on everyone. And that's my story. My talk story, my Molokai. We cannot run from the wind, so use the stars as sails and the sun as your board. Race across the universe and look for favourable harbours and shelter there in peace. Follow your zen, inspire someone, put out a hand, be peaceful in the storm, dare to believe. Supexplore.